This season is shaping up to be one wild ride for Bills Mafia. In just 24 hours, we got a flood of injury updates, some genuinely encouraging roster news, and a trade rumor so big it might just change the entire outlook of Buffalo's championship window. So buckle up, because we're covering it all. Let's start with the health report, because honestly, it's about as good as Bills fans could have hoped for on day one. Brandon Beane stepped up to the podium right after the very first training camp practice, and the headline is this: almost the entire active roster was out there on the field. In a league where availability is everything, that's a massive win right out of the gate. The one notable absence was wide receiver Tyrell Shavers, who opened camp on the physically unable to perform list. If you've been following the Bills closely, this isn't a shock. Shavers tore his ACL during last season's playoff game against Jacksonville, and everyone knows that kind of injury simply takes time. But here's the encouraging part. Beane made it clear that Shavers has been in the building all off-season, grinding through rehab every single day. According to Beane, you'd never even know what Shavers is going through just by looking at him. He shows up every day locked in, staying positive, and putting in the work. That's the kind of mental toughness that turns a scary injury into a comeback story. Beane isn't rushing him, though. Buffalo doesn't expect Shavers to be ready for Week 1, and honestly, that's the right call. There's no reason to gamble with a player's long-term health when you're building toward a championship run, not a single July practice. Now here's where things get really interesting. Michael Holt has quietly been one of the most fascinating storylines of the entire offseason. He's been battling back from an Achilles injury, and for most of the spring, he was limited to side work with trainers. But on the very first day of camp, Holt finally participated in full team drills. That's a massive milestone. He'd set a personal goal of being ready by training camp, and he's hitting that target right on schedule. Beane sounded genuinely optimistic, saying the plan now is to keep Holt healthy through camp, get him some preseason reps to shake off the rust, and have him fully ready for Week 1. With Buffalo shifting to a 3-4 defensive front under coordinator Jim Leonhard, having a versatile piece like Holt back and healthy is a legitimately big deal. Then there's the linebacker situation. Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams both dealt with injuries this spring, so there was some real curiosity about how camp would go for them. The good news? Both were out there practicing. Buffalo is simply managing their workload carefully, easing them back in instead of throwing them straight into the fire. And honestly, that's exactly the approach you want. Nobody remembers who won practice reps in July. What matters is who's standing tall in January. If that means a slightly lighter workload now to guarantee full health later, that's a trade Bills fans will take every single time. So overall, day one of camp was about as positive a health report as you could ask for. But that's only half of today's story, because there's a second bombshell that has Bills Mafia absolutely buzzing, and it involves one of the most dominant defensive players in football. Reports have surfaced that Tampa Bay Buccaneers nose tackle Vita Vea has formally requested a trade, and the reason is simple: a contract standoff. Vea is entering the final year of his deal, he's been pushing hard for a long-term extension, and after failed negotiations, his agent made the trade request official. Sound familiar? This is eerily similar to how the Micah Parsons situation unfolded before it eventually became very real. And now, several contending teams around the league are reportedly circling, wondering if Tampa Bay might actually be willing to move on from one of its defensive cornerstones. One of those teams generating serious buzz? The Buffalo Bills. And once you look at Buffalo's biggest weakness from last season, it's not hard to see why. The Bills got gashed on the ground for most of last year, allowing over 135 rushing yards per game, ranking near the bottom of the entire league. Only one team in football performed worse defending the run in terms of efficiency. That is not the kind of stat you want walking into a playoff run. Enter Vita Vea. Even heading into his age 31 season, Vea remains one of the most physically dominant interior defenders in football. He's a nightmare to move off the line of scrimmage. He commands double teams on nearly every single snap. And over the past several seasons, he's generated more quarterback pressure from the nose tackle position than almost anyone else in the league not named Dexter Lawrence. Last season alone, he still managed 4.5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss, despite constantly facing double and triple teams, slotting him into the middle of Jim Leonhard's 3-4 defense. Alongside Ed Oliver and rising young talent like Deone Walker could completely transform how offenses attack Buffalo up front. Of course, nothing this good comes without a price. Vea's contract carries a cap hit north of $20 million, and if Buffalo wants to sign him long-term instead of just renting him for a year, we're talking about a deal that could push $25 million annually. On top of the money, Buffalo would likely need to give up a premium draft asset just to get a deal started, and they wouldn't be the only team calling. Reports suggest teams like the Raiders, Packers, Ravens, Jaguars, and Bears could all be sniffing around this situation too. Still, here's the argument Bills fans keep coming back to. Buffalo has arguably the best quarterback on the planet right now in Josh Allen, and he's playing at an MVP level in the absolute prime of his career. Windows like this do not stay open forever, if there's even a chance to fix the one glaring weakness that's held this defense back. Shouldn't Brandon Beane at least pick up the phone and find out what it would take? Now, to be clear, none of this is a done deal. Tampa Bay could still work out an extension and keep Vea right where his entire career started. A trade request doesn't guarantee a trade happens. But if he really does hit the market, it's hard to imagine Buffalo sitting this one out. Put it all together, and you've got a Bills team entering the season healthier than expected, with key defensive pieces trending in the right direction, and a front office that's clearly still hunting for that one move to push them over the top. This team feels close, really close, but everybody in Buffalo knows that close isn't good enough anymore. The goal isn't just winning the division. It's bringing home a Lombardi trophy. So here's the big question for all of you. Would you trade a premium draft pick and hand Vita Vea a massive new contract if it meant fixing this defense for a real Super Bowl run? Or should Beane hold on to his draft capital and trust the guys already in the building? Drop your take in the comments, because I already know Bills Mafia is going to have some strong opinions on this one. If you enjoyed this update, smash that like button, and if you believe this is finally the year Buffalo gets over the hump, hit subscribe so you don't miss a single update this season. Go Bills!